Hello and welcome to another episode of the Halloween Podcast. I am your host, Lyle Perez, and you're listening to episode 58 of our special series, The Dark Record, where we uncover history's eeriest stories, one strange and unsettling case at a time. This time, the story begins not in the dusty corners of history, but in the modern world, on an internet auction site. It was here, in 2003, that an antique wooden wine cabinet was listed for sale, but the description claimed it was no ordinary box. The seller said it carried a curse, a restless spirit from Jewish folklore known as a Dybbuk, bound inside and eager to harm anyone who set it free. From there, the story took on a life of its own, spiraling into legend, inspiring films, and fueling endless debate. The next entry into the dark record, the Dybbuk Box. Let's begin. To understand the legend of the Dybbuk Box, we first need to return to Jewish folklore, where the word Dybbuk has deep and unsettling roots. The term comes from the Hebrew verb dabbak, meaning to cling. In mystical tradition, a Dybbuk was a restless soul that latched onto the living, binding itself to their body and influencing their behavior. Unlike demons of Christian belief, Dybbuks were not seen as eternal forces of evil, but as the spirits of deceased humans, souls unable to find peace because of sins, unfinished obligations, or violent deaths. Accounts of Dybbuk possession became more prominent in Eastern Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly within Kabbalistic traditions. These tales often described individuals who suddenly began to speak in strange voices, curse, or reveal knowledge they should not have. Communities interpreted this behavior as evidence of a spirit intruding into the body. Victims might grow weak, fall into trances, or even display multiple voices during prayer or ritual. In some stories, Dybbuks could be spiteful, tormenting their host with physical pain. In others, they carried messages, final words from the dead demanding justice or closure. The solution was ritual exorcism performed by a rabbi or mystic with knowledge of sacred texts. The exorcist would use prayers, the shofar, a ram's horn, or invocations of divine names to force the spirit out. Dybbuks were believed to leave through the toes or throat, screaming as they departed. Sometimes the ceremony ended with the Dybbuk being guided toward the afterlife. Other times, it was cast out to wander once more. These stories reinforce the belief that life and death were not neatly separated, that the souls of the departed could intrude upon the living when balance was broken. Over the centuries, Dybbuks became a fixture of Jewish folklore and even inspired works of art and literature. S. Ansky's 1920 play, The Dybbuk, popularized the legend in modern culture, dramatizing a young woman possessed by the spirit of her dead lover. The play cemented the Dybbuk in the public imagination as a figure of haunting and obsession. But here's the critical detail. In all of this tradition, there were no Dybbuk boxes. Spirits did not dwell in wine cabinets or cursed containers. They inhabited people, not objects. The idea of sealing a Dybbuk into a physical item belongs not to Jewish mysticism, but to modern horror storytelling. What happened in the early 2000s was the grafting of an old belief, spirit possession, onto a new invention, a haunted antique sold online. That's what makes the Dybbuk Box unique. It blends genuine folklore with modern myth-making, taking a centuries-old fear of possession and reshaping it into an artifact for the internet age. The Dybbuk is authentic. The box is not. Together, they created a legend that feels timeless, even though its origins are startlingly recent. The story of the Dybbuk Box as we know it doesn't begin in folklore, but in 2003 with an online auction. That year, a man named Kevin Mannis purchased an antique wooden wine cabinet at an estate sale in Portland, Oregon. The sale had been held for the family of a recently deceased Holocaust survivor. Mannis claimed the woman's granddaughter told him the box should never be opened, warning that it contained a Dybbuk. Intrigued, Mannis took the cabinet home, but soon described strange events: lights flickering, objects breaking, shadows moving through his shop. He said he and those around him suffered nightmares of a terrifying hag. Even his mother, after being given the box, was hospitalized following a stroke. Mannis decided to put the object up for sale on eBay, describing its eerie history in vivid detail. He warned prospective buyers that it carried a curse. The listing quickly went viral. This was the early age of online storytelling, when a well-written post could travel far beyond the original auction site. The description was shared on message boards, paranormal forums, and eventually news outlets. The Dybbuk Box became a sensation, not just an antique for sale, but an unfolding horror story that anyone could follow with a click. As the box changed hands, its reputation grew. New owners claimed it brought misfortune, sickness, and overwhelming dread. One said he woke every night from recurring nightmares. Another reported a lingering smell of jasmine and cat urine in his home. A museum director named Jason Haxton acquired it and built an entire website dedicated to documenting its legend. He wrote a book about his experiences, claiming the box made him ill, blurred his vision, and filled his mind with horrific dreams. Hollywood soon took notice. The story was optioned for film, and in 2012, The Possession brought the Dybbuk Box legend to the big screen. The movie amplified the myth, framing the cabinet as a dangerous, cursed object tied to Jewish mysticism. By then, the Dybbuk Box had transformed from a curious eBay listing into one of the most famous haunted objects of the 21st century. What set it apart was the way it spread. Unlike older legends passed down orally, this one grew in real time on the internet. Each retelling added details, each owner contributed testimony, and each click carried the story further. A wine cabinet that might have gone unnoticed in a thrift shop had instead become an artifact of terror, stitched together by storytelling, media, and belief. Once the Dybbuk Box story left eBay, it slipped fully into the world of the paranormal. Ghost hunters, horror fans, and internet forums treated it not as a curiosity, but as proof that cursed objects could exist in the modern age. The imagery was irresistible: an old wooden cabinet said to contain a restless spirit, passed from one unlucky owner to the next, leaving misfortune in its wake. Television gave the box another surge of notoriety. It was featured on Ghost Adventures, where Zach Boggins claimed it was among the most haunted objects he had ever encountered. The cabinet eventually became part of Bagon's Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, displayed as a centerpiece alongside other notorious artifacts. Visitors reported feelings of dread, nausea, or sudden headaches when approaching the exhibit, reinforcing the idea that the box radiated an unexplainable presence. Online, the Dybbuk Box took on a life of its own. Reddit threads and YouTube channels speculated about its powers, weaving personal anecdotes with Mannis's original eBay story. Medium articles and paranormal blogs expanded the legend, treating it as if it had centuries of history behind it. Some even tied the Dybbuk Box to celebrity encounters, claiming it was linked to a string of bad luck or tragedies that befell those who came near it. Hollywood's 2012 film The Possession pushed the myth further into popular culture. Although it fictionalized many details, it cemented the idea of the Dybbuk Box as an object of terror. In the movie, opening the cabinet released a malevolent force that preyed on its victims. an image that aligned neatly with the folklore of spirit possession, even if the historical connection was tenuous at best. What fascinated people most was the combination of old and new. The box evoked the age-old fear of cursed objects, like haunted dolls or talismans, yet it had been discovered in a thoroughly modern way, through an online auction site. It was a ghost story born not in the shadow of an abandoned house, but in the glow of a computer screen. That blend of tradition and technology gave the Dybbuk Box a unique place in paranormal lore, a bridge between ancient superstition and the digital age of storytelling. For all its eerie reputation, the Dybbuk Box doesn't hold up well under close examination. From the beginning, skeptics pointed out that no such object existed in Jewish folklore. Dybbuks were spirits said to cling to people, not entities sealed inside containers. The idea of a box holding a demon was a creative twist, not a tradition. Investigators later uncovered more details that chipped away at the legend. The cabinet itself wasn't an ancient heirloom at all, but a mid-20th century minibar, mass-produced in New York during the 1950s or 60s. Far from being a relic smuggled out of Europe, it was the kind of furniture you might find in a second-hand shop. The Holocaust backstory, it turned out, was entirely fictional. In 2021, Kevin Mannis, the man who wrote the original eBay listing, openly admitted that the Dybbuk Box legend was a hoax. He explained that he invented the story as a piece of interactive horror, blending genuine Jewish folklore with a fictional cursed object to engage people. In his words, the Dybbuk Box was always a creative writing experiment, not a historical artifact. Even before Mannis's confession, folklorists and paranormal researchers had already suspected as much. The story spread because it was compelling, not because it was verifiable. It was written in a way that invited readers to share, to speculate, and to contribute their own experiences. Each new owner added another chapter, whether they believed in the curse or not. To skeptics, this is what makes the Dybbuk Box fascinating, not as evidence of a haunting, but as a case study in how legends are born. A story crafted for an online auction spiraled into books, films, and museum exhibits. It shows how quickly belief can grow around an object once people are primed to see it as dangerous. The power of the Dybbuk Box isn't in the wood or hinges of the cabinet. It's in the narrative people built around it. What began as an imaginative tale has become one of the most famous modern haunted objects, proving that myths don't need centuries of tradition to take root. Sometimes all it takes is a clever story, the right audience, and a willingness to believe. Even after Kevin Mannis admitted he invented the Dybbuk Box story, its legend refused to die. In fact, the revelation only seemed to add another layer to its appeal. The box had already carved out a place in popular culture, and by then, it didn't matter whether the story was fact or fiction. It had become an icon of modern folklore. The cabinet is now displayed at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, where it remains one of the most talked about exhibits. Visitors describe overwhelming dread, sudden nausea, or the sense of being watched when standing near it. The box has even been kept behind glass at times, with warnings posted for those who want to approach. Whether those reactions are psychological or something stranger, they reinforce the idea that the Dybbuk Box is more than just wood and hinges. It's an experience. Hollywood helped cement its legacy. The Possession, released in 2012, introduced the Dybbuk Box to millions of moviegoers, amplifying the myth with terrifying visuals. Online, the box became a staple of horror storytelling. Paranormal blogs, YouTube channels, and Reddit threads continue to speculate about its powers. It even shows up in countdown lists of the world's most haunted objects, right alongside cursed dolls and relics with centuries of folklore behind them. What gives the Dybbuk Box staying power is its perfect blend of old and new. It borrows from Jewish folklore about restless spirits, a tradition with deep cultural roots. But it's packaged in a distinctly modern way, an internet listing that went viral, fueled by user comments and passed along through digital word of mouth. The box represents how myths are made in the 21st century, not whispered in dark corners, but broadcast through screens and amplified by social media. Even skeptics admit the story endures because it touches on something universal. Cursed objects have always fascinated people. From ancient talismans to haunted antiques, we're drawn to the idea that evil can be contained in something ordinary, waiting for the wrong hands to set it loose. The Dybbuk Box, no matter its origins, delivers that same shiver, a reminder that sometimes it's not the object that's dangerous, but the story wrapped around it. What strikes me about the Dybbuk Box is how powerful a story can be, even when we know it isn't true. Kevin Mannis eventually admitted that he made up the tale, but by then, it had already taken root. People believed in it, passed it on, and even added their own experiences to the legend. In a way, the Dybbuk Box stopped being just a piece of furniture and became a mirror for our imagination. I think about how it bridges two worlds, old folklore and modern myth-making. The Dybbuk itself is a real figure in Jewish tradition, a restless soul clinging to the living. That belief carried weight for centuries. But the box is a creation of the internet age, a cursed object born not in whispered stories, but in an online auction. When the two merged, they created something new, a legend that feels both ancient and contemporary, authentic and invented. It makes me reflect on why we're drawn to cursed artifacts in the first place. Maybe it's because objects are tangible. Unlike ghosts, which vanish into thin air, a box or a doll can be touched, displayed, or passed along. They give the supernatural a physical anchor, something we can point to and say, that's the thing to be afraid of. Even when reason tells us it's just wood and nails, the unease lingers. For me, the Dybbuk Box is less about whether it's haunted and more about what it reveals about us. We want to believe. We want stories that connect us to mystery, even if they're made up. And sometimes, the fear those stories create is real enough to matter. That brings us to the end of episode 58 of The Dark Record. We've traced the Dybbuk Box from its roots in Jewish folklore to its reinvention as a cursed antique sold on eBay. We've seen how Kevin Mannis's tale spread across the internet, how television and film amplified it, and how skeptics revealed it was never part of Jewish tradition at all. Yet the legend endures, not because it's real, but because it taps into something timeless, our fascination with cursed objects and the stories we build around them. The Dybbuk Box is proof that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's in the box, but the fear we let out when we believe. Remembered, retold, and now added to the record. Next time, we'll travel to Massachusetts, where strange footprints once terrified an entire village. In 1977, locals reported a creature unlike anything they'd ever seen. Small, gray-skinned, and otherworldly. We'll examine the mystery of the Dover Demon. Until then, I'm Lyle Perez, and this has been the Halloween Podcast presenting The Dark Record. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps keep the show alive and weird. You can also explore sources, extras, and more at our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Halloween Podcast or at our website, thehalloweenpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes on the shadows, and remember, the Dybbuk may sleep in silence, but it never forgets the sound of its name. Have a good night.